guys, welcome to Drew Code Sports Talk. I am your host, Andrew Wright. Over here to my right, your left, is my co-host, Cody Johnson. And we are going to be talking more off-season football. Stay tuned. All right, so the Eagles end up losing against the New Orleans Saints with a valiant effort by Nick Foles. Speaking of Nick Foles, what do the Eagles do this offseason with Nick Foles?
The Eagles need to trade Nick Foles for some assets, to be honest. So I know that there's been a lot of rumors that there's been talk of Carson Wentz getting traded. In my humble opinion, if the Eagles did that, they would be, I wouldn't say the dumbest franchise, but it would not be the brightest move to make because you gave up so much future assets for one player that you're going to just ship off after 2.5 seasons. That wouldn't be very smart. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, Nick Foles has proven that he could help lead this offense, and he did really well. He didn't get as far as he did last year, obviously. But I think Nick Foles needs to find a good organization that'll take care of him. Now, I know that the last time he left the Eagles, he ended up going to the then St. Louis Rams, and he was coached under Jeff Fisher. Did not do well at all. But also, when Jeff Fisher got Jared Goff, did not do well with him. So does that say anything about the quarterbacks or the coach of those quarterbacks? I think more of the coach. I think if Nick Foles goes to somewhere like the Jaguars, I think turns their franchise around. I think if he goes, what's another team that's desperately in need of a quarterback right now?
Browns. I'm just kidding.
Well, Mayfield, he's kind of got that locked up. But I would even argue the Tennessee Titans. I don't think Marcus Mariota is really living up to his draft stock. I think he's kind of underwhelmed himself, and I think Foles would definitely help turn that franchise around or at least make them a more contender. News of Carolina Panthers thinking about setting Cam Newton the whole season. That would be a great trade right there. Just a handful of organizations I would assume. I mean, if this happened, this is where I might even think about jumping off the bandwagon if the Oakland Raiders traded for him. Which I know that we have A.J. McCarron, and then I don't know why, but we have Nate Peterman. Don't get me started on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if our own Oakland Raiders did something like that.
We could have 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Why not? You have a quarterback. You have a quarterback.
Hashtag 4 quarterbacks. Yeah. So, fantasy shout-out, by the way.
16 quarterbacks.
There we go. Anyways, guys, so with all that being said, I definitely think Eagles need to trade Nick Foles, get some assets, get a couple of mid-rounders. I mean, heck, maybe even, depending on how desperate the franchise is, get a second rounder or a third rounder. I think that'd be great return on that one. So
I'm going to disagree with you. You can call it clickbait, but I would trade Wentz. And the reason I'm saying that,
do tell.
Yes, as in Carson Wentz, I would trade him. Yes. Because multiple reports have said that Nick Foles has been more coachable with Doug Peterson. And so whatever Doug Peterson is calling, that's what he wants to happen. And we've seen this offense just go off. We've seen Alshon Jeffrey all of a sudden emerge. Not just Zach Ertz all the time. We've also seen Golden Tate have an uptick ever since that Nick Foles has been the quarterback. Nelson Aguilar has gotten into, and that's what I always said. Nelson Aguilar to me was a pretty good receiver, and with Carson Wentz, he never went to him. I almost drafted him, and I kept following him on fantasy. I was like, Aguilar's doing nothing. What the heck?
Yep.
So, listen, I understand that Carson Wentz is a better overall quarterback. But here's the thing. If you get Nick Foles, just like what we talked about with the Dak Prescott thing, you have more money, more assets to keep the team that you have now. You could probably keep a Golden Tate if you wanted to. Honestly, they don't need to. But you could keep a Michael Bennett. You could keep his name is blanking Cox. Brian Cox? Fletcher Cox. You could keep Chris Long for another year. You could have, Darby, even though he went down an injury, you could have him back. I mean, there's so many things you could do if you keep Nick Foles. because Nick Foles is not going to get a franchise quarterback money. He's not going to. I don't even care if the Jaguars were saying, hey, we need a quarterback. They're not going to pay him that franchise money because he's not in the market for that. Dak Prescott has a better chance of getting that because he's proven what he can do. With Nick Foles, listen, he's played in the NFL for years. We said he went to the Rams and he listened to the coach and it wasn't good. We see what he can do with a coach. Mm-hmm. What do they have in Philadelphia? They have their coach, and he's worked with him. Mm-hmm. Why not keep that? Listen, if you trade Carson Wentz, you get a ton more assets. If Amari Cooper went for 1 first round, mm-hmm. and Khalil Mack went for 2 first rounds, and mm-hmm. then other draft picks, yep. Carson Wentz will definitely go for at least 2 first-round draft picks. I say if you're the Eagles, do it. Because mm-hmm. Doug Peterson can coach Nick Foles. Nick Foles is going to say, yes, sir. That's it. Carson Wentz, I'm not saying he's the guy, he's Aaron Rodgers where he's constantly fighting with his head coach. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he's that, but he does stuff more on the fly. And with Nick Foles, he's going to do what he's told, and you see that offense runs better when the quarterback is doing what he's told. I feel like Nick Foles for the Eagles mm-hmm. is the best fit.
And here's where I'll push back on that. Your points are very valid in the sense that Nick Foles is more coachable. You can potentially get more assets back if you keep Foles. But I think most of those points, though, could be also argued against where you get more assets back if you trade Foles. Because one, he's experienced, he's coachable, he'll be there, and he's durable. I mean, no offense. I mean, kind of the argument could be made, too, is because Carson Wentz is injury, he's not going to be as high asset valued as Nick Foles. Nick Foles doesn't get injured very often, and therefore he's more available, he's coachable, and he's all these things, and he's got NFL experience. Why not just keep Wentz, let him get healthy, and then that way you turn the offense over? He's definitely the better arm talent. We can both agree on that. Mm-hmm. But definitely I think you would get more assets in return. Even if it's a player in draft picks or a collection of draft picks, I think the pot is bigger with Foles based off of your points to argue to keep him with the experience, coachability, all that stuff, a proven Super Bowl winner. He can take a team to the playoffs or help them get through the playoffs. Because let's be honest, Nick Foles did help the Eagles team more this year than even if he did last year, even though he won them the Super Bowl. We can definitely agree he did more with them this year because he started the first 3 games and he basically ended the last 3 games and then also the playoff game or the wild card game. So I definitely think that with your points, you can turn that around to say that's why you need to get Foles for as much as you can because you'll get more for him right now.
But if you're the Eagles, you want to keep the guy who's more durable. You've already put in, yes, it may be only 2.5 years that you've had Carson Wentz, but you've already put in that time, and he's got injured every single year. Even his senior year in college, mm-hmm. he was injured. So you've already had 3 straight years where this guy has gotten injured mm-hmm. and basically been out for the year. With Nick Foles, he may not be the best quarterback, but you want him to stay in Philadelphia. Right now, he's a godsend to Philadelphia. If they didn't have Nick Foles, their season would have been done a long time ago.
What did Carson Wentz look like for the Eagles last season before he got injured?
He was definitely going to be MVP.
Right. Absolutely. He was, 13-1, I think he led them before he went down with the injury.
Exactly.
Granted, he came back, and it was a lot tougher for his season. They had more injuries to deal with. They didn't really have any running game. They didn't have Blunt from returning from last season. Ajayi went down with a knee injury, mm-hmm. out for the whole season. You had Sproles that was injured 90% of the season. By the time he came back, Wentz was already down. Mm-hmm. I think that Carson Wentz is the better, even though he's injury prone, I think that the season prior is a good example of what potential could be with that Doug Peterson offense and how good Wentz is talent-wise with everything. And then that's why you can look at this season, but really it's tough because of the injuries. And
that's my fallback, though, is when you look at the injuries, you look at how he came back this past year. It wasn't as good as he was last year.
Sure. I mean,
and now you're going to have another injury on top of that. We don't know how he's going to look.
Not all players coming back from ACL turn into Adrian Peterson where they have a superb MVP season following. So I'm going to, even when Tom Brady came back from his torn ACL the following season, I want to say this is 2008. Was it 8? 2008. He was not the same quarterback, even like the first, I'll say he wasn't even the same quarterback the first 8 to 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. He had to get that feeling back. Carson Wentz in the last 10 weeks. So I think that's
exactly. That's my point.
Okay, but a completely different injury that had nothing to do with the. It's not like it's not like he has chronic.
The same thing,
right? It's not like he's got a chronic knee or ankle injury. I mean, he basically took a lot of hits from a depleted offensive line with injuries, and subsequently injured his back. And then, of course, they kept him out for safety. And I think the Eagles did that because they didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. And in kind of the funny thing is they sat him out, basically waving the white flag but not telling anybody. They won out of spite, and then it looks like Nick Foles saved their season because he won them these games. But really, it was like, well, they didn't think they were going to win. They shut him down for the season to protect himself because they thought they were out of the playoffs. It was really a long shot, and they still got it out of spite. But we can probably go back and forth about this all day, but we don't have time because the video is about to run out. So,
hey guys, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comment down below on what you think the Eagles should do with Nick Foles, and like the video as well. We appreciate all of it. Thanks.